My name is Josh, and I've spent the better part of my adult life teaching high school history. I've always believed in the power of education, not just in the classroom, but in life. Every morning, I rise with the sun, brewing a strong cup of coffee while the world outside slowly comes to life. My students are more than just names on a roster, they're future leaders, thinkers, and dreamers. Each lesson I teach is a piece of my heart, a way to inspire them to question, explore, and strive for a better future. I pride myself on my dedication. I'm often the first one at school, ready to prepare for the day ahead, and the last one to leave, ensuring that every student feels heard and valued. There's a certain satisfaction in watching the light of understanding flicker in their eyes, a reminder that my efforts matter. I pour my energy into creating engaging lessons, organizing field trips, and mentoring students who struggle. Teaching isn't just a job for me, it's my passion. Then there's Kate, my wife. We met during our college years, both eager and enthusiastic about making our mark in the world of education. She is a special education teacher, and her patience and compassion are evident in everything she does. I've always admired her dedication to her students and the way she sees the potential in every child, no matter their challenges. Her classroom is a haven, filled with laughter, creativity, and encouragement. We often joke that we are two sides of the same coin. She brings warmth and empathy to my structured world of facts and figures. Our life together feels like a carefully crafted lesson plan, balanced and harmonious. We share a cozy little house just a few blocks from the school, decorated with pictures of our travels, mementos from our adventures, and, of course, art projects created by her students. Every Friday night, we have a ritual of cooking dinner together, dancing in the kitchen to our favorite tunes while the aromas of our meal fill the air. We laugh easily, support each other's dreams, and cherish the quiet moments that remind us of how lucky we are to have found each other. On the surface, everything seems perfect. Our friends often tell us how enviable our relationship is, and how well we complement each other. We both work at the same school, making it easy to share our days over dinner, discussing the triumphs and challenges of our students. We attend faculty meetings together, joke with our colleagues, and celebrate the small victories of each day. But beneath this veneer of perfection, cracks are beginning to form, small, almost imperceptible at first. I noticed that Kate has started staying late at school more often. It begins with harmless excuses, extra help sessions for her students or faculty meetings that run long. I don't think much of it at first, after all, teaching can be demanding, and we both pour ourselves into our work. Still, as the weeks pass, I can't shake the feeling that something has shifted. The laughter that used to fill our home is now occasionally replaced with silence. I dismiss the nagging doubts in my mind, reminding myself that we are both just busy with our careers. But as I watch her sneak glances at her phone, typing quickly and then shutting it off as I enter the room, a gnawing sense of unease settles in my gut. Despite this, I cling to the belief that our life is a beautifully scripted narrative, one that can withstand the tests of time and tribulation. Little did I know, the plot was about to take an unexpected turn, shattering the illusion of our perfect life and unraveling everything I thought I knew. It was a Thursday evening, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, the remnants of our usual dinner still scattered around. I absent-mindedly pushed the uneaten food around my plate while glancing at the clock. It was well past 8, and Kate still hadn't come home. I tried to convince myself that it was just another late night at school, but a sinking feeling began to settle in my stomach. Kate had always been dedicated to her students, often taking on extra responsibilities to ensure they received the support they needed. But lately, her late nights had become more frequent, and I couldn't help but notice a change in her demeanor. She was less enthusiastic when she came home, and the vibrant spark that once lit up her eyes seemed to flicker and dim. As the minutes ticked by, my mind raced with questions. Was she overwhelmed by her workload? Was something going on with her students that I didn't know about? Each possibility felt like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. I tried to distract myself by grading papers, but I found my focus slipping. Instead, I kept stealing glances at the front door, hoping to hear the familiar sound of her keys jingling. When she finally walked in, her hair was slightly disheveled, and her cheeks were flushed. I could tell she was a bit frazzled, but she greeted me with a warm smile, which eased my concerns, if only for a moment. "Sorry I'm late," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. We had a staff meeting that ran longer than expected. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though the concern crept into my voice. Yeah, just some updates on the new curriculum. You know how it is, she replied, avoiding my gaze as she reached for her phone. I noticed her thumb moving quickly across the screen, a habit that was becoming increasingly common. The way she held her phone, angled away from me as she replied to a message, sent a shiver down my spine. After a few moments of small talk, I decided to confront her. You seem a bit distracted lately. Is there something on your mind? Her reaction was instantaneous. She looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. No, I'm just busy with work. You know how it is, it's the beginning of the school year, and things are always hectic. I nodded, trying to mask my unease, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way she was suddenly so secretive about her phone, the subtle glances she threw at it during our conversations, it all felt like a puzzle missing crucial pieces. Over the next few days, my uneasiness grew. I began to pay closer attention to her behavior. Whenever I would walk into a room, she'd quickly lock her phone or switch tabs on her computer. I tried to brush it off as paranoia, but the feeling was persistent. One afternoon, while cleaning up our home office, I stumbled upon a stack of papers that contained printouts of emails between Kate and Jamie, her colleague. My heart raced as I read through their exchanges. They were filled with playful banter and inside jokes that made me feel like an outsider in my own life. There was a particular message that stood out, where Kate referred to Jamie as the best part of my day. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. The next evening, I decided to casually bring up Jamie during dinner, hoping to gauge her reaction. So, how's Jamie doing? Still working on that project together? Kate's expression shifted instantly. A flicker of something crossed her face. Was it guilt? Yeah, he's fine. Busy, like the rest of us, she said, her tone a little too sharp. I pressed on, I've heard great things about the way he interacts with students. You two make a good team. She stiffened at my words, her fork pausing midair. We do what we have to do for the kids, Josh. It's just work, she replied, her voice lacking the warmth I had grown accustomed to. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, my mind raced with doubt. I replayed the evening's conversation, analyzing every nuance of her tone and expression. The seeds of suspicion had been planted, and they were beginning to take root. I couldn't help but feel that something was brewing beneath the surface, a storm that was quietly gathering strength. And I was left standing on the sidelines, trying to piece together a reality that was increasingly beginning to feel like a nightmare. The following week dragged on, each day blurring into the next as I grappled with my suspicions. The air in our home felt heavy, filled with unspoken words and underlying tension. Kate continued to stay late at school, often returning home exhausted but with an energy I couldn't quite pinpoint. I tried to push my doubts aside, but they clung to me like a shadow, growing darker with each passing moment. One Friday evening, after another long day of teaching, I came home to find the house empty and quiet. I dropped my bag on the floor and called out for Kate, but the only response was the echo of my voice. She had mentioned that she would be attending a teacher workshop, so I figured she was just caught up in the after-hours discussion. As I wandered into the living room, something caught my eye, a glimpse of Kate's purse lying on the chair. It was a habit of hers to leave it open, and tonight was no exception. Curiosity piqued, I approached it, feeling a mix of intrigue and guilt for even contemplating snooping through her things. But my instincts urged me on, pushing me to dig deeper. I opened the purse, glancing around to ensure no one was watching. As I rummaged through the various items, lip balm, a half-eaten granola bar, and a crumpled receipt, I felt a flutter of anxiety in my stomach. But then, my fingers brushed against something that made my heart race, 2 concert tickets. I pulled them out and stared at the dates printed on the glossy paper. They were for a concert happening that very weekend, an event Kate had never mentioned. I turned the tickets over in my hands, searching for clues about who she planned to attend with. That's when I noticed the name, Jamie. My heart sank. I felt a rush of anger and betrayal flood through me, overtaking any remnants of doubt. How could she go to a concert with him? The realization hit me like a slap in the face, and I struggled to catch my breath. My hands trembled as I placed the tickets back in her purse, each passing moment feeling like a countdown to the inevitable confrontation that awaited. Trying to regain my composure, I decided to take a seat and calm my racing thoughts. I thought about all the little moments that had led me to this point, the late nights, the secretive behavior. the stolen glances at her phone. It all made sense now, and the weight of the truth was suffocating. Just then, my phone buzzed on the table, pulling me out of my spiraling thoughts. It was a notification from our home computer, which we shared for both personal and professional use. Curiosity got the better of me, and I logged in to check the messages. What I found made my heart race even faster. There, in the chat history, were messages exchanged between Kate and Jamie. The conversation was lighthearted at first, filled with emojis and playful banter, but it quickly took a more intimate turn. Kate referred to Jamie as her favorite, and he responded with unmistakably flirtatious compliments. Each message was like a dagger to my heart, piercing through the illusion of trust I had built in our marriage. I scrolled through the messages, my mind racing. They discussed their plans for the concert, with Kate expressing excitement about their little getaway. My stomach twisted at the thought of her planning a night out with him. All while I sat at home, unaware of the betrayal brewing right under my nose. I felt a mixture of disbelief and anger, each emotion crashing into the other like waves against a rocky shore. How could she do this to me? To us? Our life together, built on love and trust, felt like it was collapsing around me. I realized then that I had crossed a line I never thought I would, but the evidence was right in front of me. The room felt stifling, and I knew I needed air. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, trying to breathe through the pain swelling inside me. The night was cool, the stars shining brightly overhead, but I felt none of their warmth. Instead, I was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, and a deep sadness that threatened to pull me under. As I stood on our porch, staring into the darkened street, I couldn't help but wonder what I would do next. I had the proof I needed, but the reality of confronting Kate felt overwhelming. I was torn between the desire to confront her immediately and the fear of the storm that would follow. One thing was clear, the facade of our perfect life was crumbling, and I was left standing at the edge, unsure of how to proceed. The cool night air did little to calm the tempest brewing within me as I paced back and forth on the porch. The reality of what I had discovered weighed heavily on my shoulders. I felt like a ship tossed in a storm, caught between the desire to confront Kate and the dread of what that confrontation might unleash. Finally, I made the decision, I would talk to her. I had to know the truth, even if it meant facing the most painful moment of my life. When I stepped back inside, the house felt eerily quiet. I could hear the ticking of the clock in the hallway, each tick amplifying the tension that hung in the air. I found Kate in the living room, curled up on the couch with her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, a smile breaking across her face that felt like a cruel mockery of our situation. "Hey, you're home early," she chirped, though I could sense an undercurrent of nervousness in her voice. "How was your day? Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. I tried to maintain an even tone, but my heart raced as I watched her expression change. The smile faltered, replaced by a look of concern. "Sure, what's on your mind?" she replied, setting her laptop aside. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've been noticing some things, Kate. You've been staying late at work more often. And it feels like you've been distant." I found the concert tickets. Her eyes widened slightly, and I could see her trying to piece together a response. "Josh, I can explain." "I don't want explanations yet. I need you to be honest with me," I interrupted, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I found those tickets in your purse, and I saw the messages between you and Jamie. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going on." A flicker of panic crossed her face, quickly masked by a facade of calm. "Those tickets are just for a work event. I thought it would be a nice break for us. You know how stressful this year has been," she said, her voice rising slightly in pitch. "Stop right there," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "You can't lie to me about this. I saw what you wrote. You called him your favorite. You're going to tell me that's nothing?" She stood up, running her hands through her hair as if trying to find the right words. "Josh, please, just let me explain. Jamie and I have been working closely on the new curriculum, and he's been a huge support. It's been overwhelming, and yes, we've been texting, but it's all been work-related. You know how stressful things can get." I took a step closer, my voice low but firm. "I'm not talking about work. I'm talking about the intimacy in your words. There's something more than just a professional relationship between you two. You need to stop pretending." She shook her head, a mixture of frustration and fear in her eyes. "You're misunderstanding everything. Jamie is just a friend. He's been helping me out. And I appreciate that, but it doesn't mean anything more than that. Then why were you so secretive? I pressed, refusing to back down. Why hide your phone? Why keep the concert tickets? Why the late nights? This isn't just about work anymore. It feels like you're hiding something from me, and I need to know why. Kate's composure began to crack. I didn't want to hurt you, Josh. I didn't think it would come to this. Her voice quivered, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I loved, vulnerable and scared. But that image quickly faded, replaced by defensiveness. Then why didn't you just tell me? Why not talk to me about it? I felt the frustration boiling within me. I would have listened. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand. She shot back, her eyes narrowing. Try me, I challenged, my heart pounding in my chest. This is your chance to be honest with me. To tell me what's going on between you and Jamie. For a moment, silence filled the room. I could see the battle waging within her. The internal struggle between honesty and self-preservation. Finally, she took a shaky breath. I didn't want to lose you, Josh. I thought I could manage everything. I thought it was harmless. Harmless? I echoed, incredulity flooding my voice. How can this be harmless? You're having an emotional affair, Kate. It's not just a few messages or a late-night study session. This is a betrayal. She stepped back, her face pale as if my words had struck her. I never meant for it to go this far. She whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. It just happened. The truth hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I felt the weight of her admission crash down on me like a tidal wave. This was the moment I had feared, the moment that would alter our lives forever. As I stood there, my heart shattered, I realized that the woman I loved had strayed from the path we had built together. At that moment, everything felt irreparably broken. I turned away, needing space to breathe, to think, to process the betrayal that lay bare before me. The love I had for her was still there, but it was intertwined with a gut-wrenching pain that I couldn't ignore. I had to figure out what this meant for us, for our marriage, and for the life we had envisioned together. After the confrontation, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of disbelief. The realization that my wife had strayed, that she had formed an emotional bond with another man, left me reeling. I felt like a ghost in my own life, navigating the familiar spaces of our home but haunted by the specter of what I had discovered. The air between us had grown thick with unresolved tension, and every interaction felt like a carefully choreographed dance, masking the deep rift that now lay between us. Determined to uncover the truth, I made a decision: I would start watching Kate. Not just for my peace of mind, but to gather undeniable evidence of her betrayal. I needed to know the extent of her relationship with Jamie, and the best way to do that was to observe them firsthand. The following week, I took my first steps into this covert mission. I told Kate that I would be staying late at school to grade papers and prepare for the upcoming week. I felt guilty for lying, but the stakes were too high. I parked my car a few blocks away from the school and waited, heart racing with anticipation and dread. As I watched the school grounds, I spotted Kate talking animatedly with Jamie outside the teacher's lounge. They stood close together, laughter spilling from their lips, and for a brief moment, the world around me faded away. I felt a swell of nausea as I realized how comfortable they seemed with each other, too comfortable for my liking. I took out my phone and discreetly snapped a photo of them, my hands trembling as I pressed the shutter. The click felt loud in the stillness of the parking lot, but I forced myself to remain steady. They eventually parted ways, but not before I captured a few more shots, moments of intimacy that felt like daggers to my heart. I felt like a voyeur, but my resolve was firm. I needed proof, and this was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I followed them, documenting their encounters with a meticulous eye. I watched as they met for coffee after school, exchanging playful glances that felt charged with an unspoken connection. I noted the way they leaned in closer when they spoke, the subtle touches that sent my heart spiraling into a dark abyss of anger and hurt. Each encounter felt like a punch to the gut, but I pressed on, determined to piece together the full story. By the end of the week, I had accumulated a small dossier of evidence, photographs, timestamps, and notes about their meetings. I even caught them sharing a quick kiss outside a local cafe, a fleeting moment that burned into my memory like a brand. I knew then that I had crossed a line, but I felt justified. This was my reality now, and I needed to confront it head on. With undeniable proof of Kate's infidelity in hand, I felt a shift within me. The pain had morphed into something darker, more vengeful. I found myself crafting a plan, a way to expose the truth not just for myself but for everyone who had been affected by this betrayal. Kate and Jamie's actions had consequences, and it was time for them to face those consequences publicly. The idea of organizing a parent-teacher meeting began to take shape in my mind. The school community had always been tight-knit, and the parents were deeply invested in their children's education and well-being. I envisioned a gathering where I could reveal the truth about my wife and her relationship with Jamie, an opportunity to shine a light on the darkness that had crept into our lives. I began to prepare for the meeting, carefully selecting the words I would use to convey my message. I wanted to ensure that parents understood the implications of the relationship between a teacher and a colleague, especially one who was supposed to be a role model for their children. I started reaching out to parents, inviting them to an important meeting regarding updates in the curriculum and the school's initiatives. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I made my plans, envisioning the moment when I would stand before the gathered crowd, the weight of the truth hanging in the air. I knew that my revelations would send shockwaves through the school, but I no longer cared about the fallout. All I could think about was the injustice of the situation, the betrayal that had rocked my world. I had the evidence. Now it was time to unleash it. In the days leading up to the meeting, I gathered my materials, ensuring that everything was meticulously organized. I printed out the photographs, timestamps, and notes, placing them in a folder that I would present during the meeting. The anticipation built within me like a pressure cooker, ready to explode. As the day of the meeting arrived, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. I arrived early to set up, my heart racing as my parents began to filter into the auditorium. The familiar faces, once a source of comfort, now felt like a looming audience, waiting for the curtain to rise on my revelation. I took a deep breath as I stood at the front of the room, my eyes scanning the crowd. The moment had arrived. I would reveal the truth, not just for myself, but for everyone who deserved to know the reality behind the facade. As I prepared to speak, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger confrontation, one that would change everything. The night before the meeting, I felt a restless energy coursing through me. I had spent the previous days meticulously organizing the evidence I had gathered, arranging the photographs, timestamps, and notes into a coherent narrative. Each piece of evidence felt like a nail in the coffin of my marriage, but I knew I needed to present it with clarity and conviction. I sat at the dining room table, surrounded by the remnants of our once happy life, framed photos of our wedding day, memories of vacations we had taken together, and the mundane artifacts of daily life. The sight of these reminders stirred a whirlwind of emotions, but I pushed them aside. This wasn't about nostalgia, it was about accountability. I needed to remind myself why I was doing this. As I reviewed the folder one last time, I envisioned how I would articulate my findings. I planned to begin with the context, the late nights, the excuses, the signs that had led me to suspect something was wrong. I would share the photographs, allowing the parents to see the undeniable truth for themselves. I wanted them to understand that this was not just a personal betrayal, it was a breach of trust within the school community. I decided to emphasize the importance of accountability. Kate and Jamie were not just individuals, they were teachers entrusted with the responsibility of guiding our children. Their actions had ramifications that extended beyond their own lives. I wanted to ensure that the parents understood the potential impact on their children, and how such behavior from educators could erode the very foundation of the trust that parents placed in the school. I wrote down key points I wanted to make, focusing on clarity and strength. I knew that my delivery would be just as important as the evidence itself. I practiced speaking in front of the mirror, adjusting my tone, and finding the right inflections. Each rehearsal felt empowering, and I could feel the resolve building within me. This was my moment to take back control, to confront the betrayal head-on. As I prepared for bed, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination swirling within me. I was ready to face the consequences of my actions, whatever they might be. I knew that opening up this can of worms would create ripples that could affect not just Kate and Jamie, but our families, our friends, and the entire school community. Yet, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The truth needed to be told, and I was the one who would share it. The day of the meeting arrived, shrouded in a cloud of tension that seemed to hang in the air. I dressed carefully, opting for a crisp shirt and slacks, trying to project an air of professionalism even as my stomach churned with apprehension. I arrived at the school early, the hallways eerily quiet as I set up the room for the meeting. The familiar environment felt foreign, charged with a weight that mirrored my own. As parents began to filter into the auditorium, I could feel my heart racing. I greeted them with a nod and a forced smile, but my mind was racing with thoughts of what was about to unfold. They filled the seats, their conversations a soft murmur that swirled around me, amplifying the anticipation in the air. I could see familiar faces, friends, acquaintances, parents I had spoken to many times before. They had no idea what was about to transpire. Once everyone settled in, I stood at the front, gripping the podium as I took a deep breath to steady myself. "Thank you all for coming today," I began, my voice steady but firm. "I know this meeting was called under the pretense of discussing some updates about our school, but I have something much more urgent to address. It's about the trust we place in our educators and the consequences of betrayal." I glanced around the room, watching the puzzled expressions shift to concern as I launched into my narrative. I detailed the signs I had noticed in Kate's behavior, the late nights, the secrecy, the emotional distance that had begun to creep into our lives. The room was silent as I shared my observations, and I could feel the weight of their attention pressing down on me. Then, I moved on to the evidence. I pulled out the folder and began to present the photographs, projecting them onto the screen behind me for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the audience as they took in the images of Kate and Jamie together, laughing and sharing intimate moments. I could see disbelief etched on some faces, while others wore expressions of pity and anger. "This is not just a personal betrayal," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "This is a breach of trust that affects not only me but the students who look up to these educators. How can we expect our children to respect authority when those in positions of power are engaging in relationships that undermine that trust?" I paused, letting the gravity of my words sink in. "I urge you to think about the implications of this. Kate and Jamie are not just individuals, they are teachers who are responsible for shaping the minds of our children. We cannot stand by while such behavior goes unchecked." As I spoke, I could see a mix of emotions washing over the crowd: shock, disbelief, and anger. I pressed on, detailing how Kate had tried to dismiss my concerns and how her denials had only fueled my resolve to expose the truth. It's time for them to face the consequences of their actions. They must be held accountable for the impact their choices have on our community. As I concluded my speech, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I had done it. I had stood up and shared my truth with the world. The room was electric, and I could see parents whispering among themselves, their expressions a mixture of concern and outrage. I had unleashed a storm, and I knew that the aftermath would be tumultuous. At that moment, I felt a sense of release. The burden of carrying this truth alone had lifted, replaced by a fierce determination to ensure that Kate and Jamie understood the gravity of their betrayal. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face whatever consequences lay ahead. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would reclaim my life and my dignity. The days following the parent meeting felt surreal, like a dream I couldn't wake up from. The atmosphere at the school had shifted dramatically. Conversations buzzed in hushed tones, eyes darted toward me as I walked the hallways. The storm I had unleashed was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction, mixed with an uneasy awareness of the chaos I had instigated. Kate and Jamie were summoned to the principal's office shortly after my revelations, and I heard snippets of conversations from fellow teachers about their impending fate. I watched as the rumor mill churned out wild speculations, each whisper intensifying the pressure surrounding them. The principal was known for his zero-tolerance policy when it came to ethical breaches, and I felt a twisted sense of justice knowing that I had pushed for accountability. It was during lunch the following week that the news broke. I was seated with a few colleagues when a flurry of activity erupted near the front office. Teachers and staff members exchanged hushed words, their faces taut with concern. My heart raced as I tried to tune into the conversation. "Did you hear? Kate and Jamie were just fired," one of my coworkers said, her voice low. The principal had no choice after everything that happened. I felt a rush of emotions: relief, vindication, and an unexpected pang of sadness. I had been fighting for what felt right, yet now that the moment had arrived, I couldn't shake the weight of the consequences that were unfolding. As the lunch period ended, I found myself walking down the hallway, my footsteps echoing in the silence that hung in the air. I glanced towards the teacher's lounge and saw Kate standing outside, her expression a mix of disbelief and sorrow. I could see her shaking hands, clutching her purse as she stared blankly into space. Jamie stood next to her, his posture tense, a shadow of the man I had seen laughing with her just weeks before. A knot formed in my stomach as I approached them. It felt surreal to confront the reality of what had happened. The vibrant life we once shared now lay in tatters, and I couldn't help but feel the heavy burden of that loss. "Josh," Kate said, her voice trembling as she met my gaze. I never thought it would come to this. What did you think would happen?" I replied, trying to keep my tone steady, but the anger I had harbored began to bubble to the surface. "You chose to betray our marriage, Kate. You made those choices." She opened her mouth to speak but then fell silent, the weight of her actions crashing down upon her. Jamie stood awkwardly beside her, avoiding eye contact as the reality of their situation settled in. "I don't expect you to understand," Kate said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was confused, and I made mistakes. But this wasn't what I wanted." "Then what did you want?" I challenged, my heart racing. "Did you want to hurt me? Did you want to destroy everything we built together?" The pain in her eyes mirrored the turmoil in my heart, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I once loved. But that flicker was quickly overshadowed by the enormity of her betrayal. "I just wanted to feel alive again," she confessed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't think it would lead to this." As I stood there, I felt a swell of conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, and an unsettling sense of closure. They were losing their jobs, and while I felt justified in exposing the truth, I also understood that lives were being irrevocably altered. "I hope you both find a way to navigate this," I said finally, my voice more composed than I felt. "But you need to take responsibility for your choices." With that, I turned away, leaving them to grapple with the fallout of their actions. I felt a strange sense of empowerment, but it was tainted by the recognition that my life had changed forever. The laughter, love, and dreams we had shared felt like echoes from a distant past, and I was left standing in the ruins of what had once been. As the weeks went by, the school began to return to a semblance of normalcy. But the shadows of Kate and Jamie lingered. I learned that they both had left the area, seeking new opportunities elsewhere, and I felt a twinge of sorrow for what they had lost. But I also recognized that I was free to rebuild my own life. The pain of betrayal would remain, a scar that would always be a part of me, but I could forge ahead, charting a new path without the weight of their deception dragging me down. As I returned home each night, I began to focus on my healing. I poured myself into my work, connecting with my students and rediscovering the passion that had first drawn me to teaching. The echoes of my past slowly began to fade, replaced by a sense of determination to create a future that was solely mine. The consequences of Kate and Jamie's actions had reshaped my life, but I was ready to embrace the new chapter ahead, one filled with possibilities and the chance to reclaim my happiness. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I found myself reflecting on the events that had unfolded, the chaos, the heartbreak, and the unexpected path I now walked. The memories of my life with Kate felt like distant echoes, reminders of a time filled with laughter and love, now overshadowed by betrayal. I often sat in the quiet of my living room, staring out at the setting sun, lost in thought about the fragility of trust and the permanence of its loss. Trust, I realized, was the foundation of any meaningful relationship. It was the invisible thread that held us together, the assurance that we could lean on each other without fear of being hurt. When that trust is broken, the fallout can be devastating. In my case, it had shattered my world, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life I had once taken for granted. I thought about Kate and Jamie and the choices they had made. Their actions hadn't just impacted me, they had repercussions for their own lives, their careers, and the trust of the parents and students who once admired them. The betrayal had sent shockwaves through our community, reminding everyone of the importance of ethical behavior, especially in positions of authority. It was a painful lesson, but one that would resonate long after they were gone. Yet, amidst the pain and reflection, I began to see glimmers of hope. The experience had forced me to confront my desires, my dreams that had lain dormant under the weight of our shared life. I realized that I had neglected my aspirations, allowing the comfort of routine to dull my ambitions. With the burden of betrayal slowly lifting, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I began to explore new opportunities in my career, attending workshops and conferences that reignited my passion for teaching. I sought out mentorship and connected with other educators who inspired me. I had a fresh perspective on my role as a teacher, understanding now more than ever the importance of nurturing trust with my students and their families. Outside of work, I made a conscious effort to rebuild my social life. Friends who had supported me during the turmoil became a lifeline, and I slowly opened myself up to new relationships. I found solace in the company of others, discovering that vulnerability could lead to connection rather than isolation. Each new friendship was a step toward healing, a reminder that life continued even after loss. In the evenings, I took long walks, allowing myself to reflect on the lessons learned. I would often jot down my thoughts in a journal, capturing the journey from betrayal to recovery. It became a therapeutic outlet, a way to process my emotions and document my growth. Writing helped me to articulate the complexities of my experience, and I began to see the beauty in the resilience that had emerged from the ashes. As I stood on the precipice of a new chapter, I understood that while the scars of betrayal would remain, they would also serve as reminders of my strength. I had endured and emerged on the other side, ready to reclaim my dreams and embrace the opportunities that awaited me. The experience changed me, reshaping my outlook on relationships and trust. I learned that love and loyalty were not guaranteed, they required nurturing and commitment. I vowed to approach future relationships with an open heart but also with a discerning eye, aware of the importance of mutual respect and honesty. In the end, the journey through betrayal led me to a deeper understanding of myself and the value of the connections I formed. Trust may be fragile, but it can also be rebuilt, stronger than before. I was ready to embrace the future, a future filled with hope, possibilities, and the promise of new beginnings. With each passing day, I reclaimed the fragments of my life, weaving them into a tapestry of resilience and renewed purpose. As I looked toward the horizon, I felt a sense of excitement for what lay ahead, a new adventure, a fresh start, and a life lived fully and authentically.